Hello there, Metalheads, and welcome to another episode of Metal Verbalizers podcast. In this episode, we are going to verbalize a band inspired by the giants from the 80s. In this episode, we are verbalizing the heavy metal band Hell in the Club. Hell in the Club is a band that debuted with their first album back in 2011. When it comes to the band's country of origin, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's Italy. This is one of those bands that really want to make sure that the 80s heavy metal is remembered and never forgotten. This is something that I love and think is important for metal. One of my favorite expressions is, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And I kind of think in a way that this applies to music as well. So why come up with a completely new genre like carrotcore or something like that if you don't need to? This does not mean that you should not put your own spin on it, which you absolutely should. In this band's case, they have made 80s heavy metal like real party music, and I love it. Like I said in the beginning, the influences in the band is really the giants from the 80s. We got bands like Guns N' Roses, Van Halen, Aerosmith, Kiss, and many more. If you go to the band's well thought through homepage, you can read more about both the band in general and the individual members. I would say that the sound is heavily influenced by the 80s, like we've talked about, with those like big hooks and fast riffing and all of that good stuff. Even though the sound feels very straightforward, they are not afraid of mixing in some digital sounds and vocal effects like the telephone effect, for example. The effects are used in a way that where it definitely do not like become too much. It is used very like sparingly so that it makes sense. I think that it is time to take a look at the music that the band has put out. And with this band, there is a bit more since the band has existed for a bit longer. Like I said earlier, the band debuted in 2011 with a full-length album actually, which is, if you ask me, really impressive. This album is called Let the Games Begin, which I guess is a very fitting title for a debut. In this album, you will find songs like Another Saturday Night, Raise Your Drinking Glass, and Star. Star is a beautiful heavy metal ballad which really caught my attention in the bunch of this album. Next in line we got another album released in 2014 called Devil on My Shoulder. This is another hard-hitting album, and in this album you will find songs like Devil on My Shoulder, which is the title track, and Beware of the Candyman and We Are the Ones. Beware of the Candyman is a very bluesy track, which packs a big punch. I would describe it as heavy metal sound with a bluesy rhythm. Now we have reached 2016, where we are treated with yet another album called Shadow of the Monster. In this album we find songs like Dance, Hell Sweet Hell, and Appetite. According to the members' bios, the band is influenced by Guns N' Roses. With that said, I can imagine that their song Appetite might be a nudge towards Guns N' Roses. It is definitely not impossible, but it can also be a coincidence. I don't know. Like if the band was some kind of a song-making machine, we only had to wait until 2017 until new music was released. This time a few singles was released called We Are on Fire, I Wanna Swing Like Peter Parker, and The Phantom Punch, and Houston, We've Got No Money. But as usual, the singles wasn't the only thing that was going to be released. They actually managed to get another great album out in 2017 called See You on the Dark Side. Of course, you will find the singles featured on this album. This time we will make a little jump to 2020, where we yet again got two new singles called Nostalgia and Will Never Leave the Castle. These were later featured on another album that they call Hell of Fame. In 2021, they released a single which was a cover of Alice Cooper's He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask. This is one of my personal favorites from Alice Cooper, and in my opinion, they have made a seriously heavy cover of the song. It is a bit different from the original, but it is at least as heavy. Now we have reached 2022, and a single called Kamikaze was released. As we have learned by now, we don't release singles without backing it up with a bigger release. So later the same year, they released an EP called Kamikaze 10 Years in the Slums. In the 5-song EP, we can find both the latest singles. But alright, now we have powered through all of the releases, and now it is time for Erik's top 5. So let's go. Number 1. Another Saturday Night from Let the Games Begin. Number 2, Devil on My Shoulder from Devil on My Shoulder. Number 3, Beware of the Candyman from Devil on My Shoulder. Number 4, Dance from Shadow of the Monster. And number 5, Nostalgia from Hell of Fame. This was a hard one to put together since they have released quite a lot during the years. But the top 5 list is just so that you get somewhere to start, so that you can find out if the band is something for you. If we were to talk about the future for the band, I like what I both see and hear from this band. These guys seem to work very hard to get great music for us fans to listen to. And also they seem to have a bunch of shows lined up for us. Actually, they are having a show today when I'm recording this episode. If you get the chance, I think that you definitely should go and see them and show them some love. I personally think that the band deserve to be a lot larger than they actually are after all of these years. Because of that, they are really deserving of an episode on our podcast, in my opinion. They do really play some real high quality heavy metal. I will say that if you like that classic 80s heavy metal from bands like Mötley Crüe, Guns N' Roses, or Kiss, and all of that, I think that you are going to really like Hell in the Club. Either way, I think that you should give the band a chance because you might be surprised. I don't know. If you happen to like what you hear from the band, I will encourage you to give them a follow on their socials, so that you are updated on what's next for the band. And you can also check out their YouTube channel where they have some live footage, and there's 1 or 2 music videos there as well that you can have a look at. If you like what we are doing here on Metal Verbalizers podcast, bringing you some new awesome metal to rock out to, make sure to give us a follow as well to get updates on what bands we are going to verbalize next. Sometimes we are also talking to the bands and interview them, or have them tell stories from the roads in our concept called Tour Stories. You can also be the one to give us tips about the next band to be verbalized. My final question to you right now is, what do you think about Hell in the Club? We would love to if you joined us on our socials so we can talk about it. But anyways, until next time, I've been Erik, and you've been listening to Metal Verbalizers podcast, verbalizing the band Hell in the Club.